Greetings, brethren, and welcome to our presentation, where today we'll address the subject of the antitypical King David. Who is it? So we're going to look at a case study and address many of the questions that have confused Davidians for decades. For example, when does antitypical King David appear? If we can know this, then we can avoid the trap of deception. Why so much confusion amongst Davidians today? It seems ever since the death of Brother Hadov that we've had a number of office seekers that have arisen, claimed this title. Are they of God or are they a counterfeit? So we're going to look at the criteria to identify who's who. And then finally, is knowing who is the antitypical King David a salvation issue? Some people argue it isn't, but are they overlooking something? Think about it. What in the Bible and the Spirit of prophecy is not a salvation issue? So these are some of the questions we want to address clearly here today as we go into our presentation. So we'll begin with this text for meditation, and I'll read this passage from Testimonies, Volume 5, page 453, paragraph 1. It reads, God means that testing truth shall be brought to the front and become a subject of examination and discussion, even if it's through the contempt placed upon it. The minds of the people must be agitated. Every controversy, every reproach, every slander will be God's means of provoking inquiry and awakening minds that would otherwise slumber. So certainly this can applicable here to this subject of who the antitypical King David is, because we've got individuals on the left and the right popping up claiming that they're the King David. So this is God's means to provoke us, to inquire, and to find out, to agitate our minds and get to the bottom of it, and to clearly identify who is the true antitypical King David, and expose this multitude of counterfeits. So with this thought in mind, if you haven't, please take a moment, pause the video, and pray, and ask the Holy Spirit, the third person of the Godhead, to guide, lead, and direct you into all truth. So we're going to do a closer look at this key verse. It's in Hosea chapter 3, verse 5. Afterward shall the children of Israel return and seek the Lord their God and David their king, and shall fear the Lord and his goodness in the latter days. So we see here a latter-day theocracy being set up, and God's people are to seek the Lord their God and David their king, two separate individuals. So we know, of course, the Lord their God is Jesus, but who's this King David? That's what we want to know. So, of course, to get the answer, there's only one place to get our doctrine, brother, sister, and that's from the Golden Bowl, the original publications of Ellen White and Victor Houda. So that's what we're going to do. And first, look at the type and antitype. Of course, without a type, there's no truth. The rod says that. And let's look at these examples here. Testimonies, Volume 3, page 339. It reads, the Son of God, although invisible to the congregation, was the leader of the Israelites. His presence went before them and conducted all their travels, while Moses was their visible leader, receiving his directions from the angel, who was Christ. So this, of course, the type in the Old Testament that it was Christ who led the Israelites out of Egypt into the Promised Land, and Moses was the chosen visible leader. Two figures. Here's another reference. Manuscript Elisus, Volume 13, page 185, paragraph 4. Shows us the same idea. God had promised Moses, my presence shall go with thee, and he fulfilled this promise by giving Christ to be the invisible leader of his people, while Moses was chosen to be their visible general. Christ guided them in their travels through the wilderness, indicating where they should encamp. Through Moses, he communicated his will and purpose to more than 1 million people. Through 40 years of wilderness wandering, he was their instructor. So once again, we see clearly here we have Christ as the invisible leader and the chosen visible agent, Moses, as the general. We also see here that there's a coming theocracy. Okay, and this is made plain in tract number 8, page 47. It reads, since, therefore, from the stem of Jesse came the rod, David, and from the rod sprang the branch, Christ, David, the visible king, and Christ, the invisible King of kings, shall, in that day, in our time, constitute the ensign, and to it shall the Gentiles seek, and his rest, or his resting place, the location where the rod or ensign stands, the kingdom, shall be glorious. Yea, I will make the place of my feet glorious, saith the Lord. So we see here a latter-day theocracy, once again, where Christ will be the invisible King of kings, and there will be this antitypical King David, a visible king. We haven't got there yet, so this is coming. And this reference, Timely Greetings, Volume 2, number 21, page 7, it reads, "Here we are definitely told that in the latter days God's saints, without a sinner among them, are to be gathered together from the four corners of the earth, and be organized in a theocratic government, of which antitypical David is to be the king." So this is plain. There will be a latter-day theocratic government, and King David will be the king. So we really need to know who this David is. It's not a guessing game here. So are we there yet? No. Are we headed that way? Yes. Let's find out how. So King David himself is a type, and this reference in tract number 8, page 13, paragraph 3 and 4 confirm this. It says, "But as David, the king of ancient Israel, had been dead for many years when this prophecy was made," Hosea 3, verses 4 and 5, "and as it has never been fulfilled, he was the type of David to come. Accordingly, it is to those who fear the Lord and his goodness, the Christian Israelites, in the latter days, who shall appoint one head or king, the antitypical David." So as we're striving to be one of the 144,000, the question is, who are we going to appoint as this head or king? Well, it's going to be the antitypical David. How can you do that if you don't know who it is? I mean, let's be logical thinkers, not bait hunters. Let's consider this. We need to know. And the evidence is plainly in the rod. Well, one diversion is some Davidians think that this antitypical King David will be Christ, but this is clearly against the shepherd's rod. Christ is not the antitypical King David. This reference in Timely Greetings, Volume 2, number 43, page 17, makes that clear. It reads, "In this part of the prophecy, you see, we are told that after they have sojourned among the Gentiles for many days, without a king, and without any sign of identification, having been entirely lost sight of as a nation and as a people, they shall finally have antitypical David rule over them. This would not be ancient David, as he was already dead when this prophecy was made. Neither could this promised David be Christ himself, for Christ is the son of David," Matthew 22:42, "not David himself. And if he shall, moreover, sit on the throne of David, then David must have a throne for him to sit on." So those ministries, Garrick Augustus and his ministry, are totally counterfeit. They are not Davidians. They don't believe in the shepherd's rod. They believe in whacked-eyed ideas that came out from the brain of a man named Roland Robbins. Okay, has nothing to do with the original shepherd's rod. So the question becomes, who will the 144,000 appoint? Well, let's look at the evidence here. Hosea 1, chapter 1, verse 11. "Then shall the children of Judah and the children of Israel be gathered together and appoint themselves one head, and they shall come up out of the land, for great shall be the day of Jezreel." Hint, hint. Let's look at this comment on this verse from Timely Greetings, Volume 2, number 6, page 17. Brother Houteff says, commenting on this verse, "The Word of God, therefore, definitely declares that the subjects of the torn-down kingdoms, Judah and Israel, as Christians, along with the Gentiles that have joined them, will gather together and appoint themselves a king." In a similar symbolism, the prophet was told that after many days of obscurity and wandering, shall the children of Israel return and seek the Lord their God and David their king. Evidently, David is the one head whom they appoint, and shall fear the Lord and his goodness in the latter days, Hosea 3:5. So why would God leave us guessing? We really need to know who this King David is that we're going to appoint if we're part of the 144,000. and avoid the trap of many counterfeits that have popped up prematurely. And it's evident here. The scripture says Jezreel is the one. It's a prophet. And who's that? Let's look at this reference. Volume 2, Timely Greetings, number 43, page 18. The one to whom God speaks, Jezreel, therefore, is symbolical of a prophet. The fact that the day of Jezreel is to be great, together with the fact that he is a symbol of a prophet, prove that not only the Davidian message itself is in prophecy, but that so also are its success and the need of reformation therein recorded. Here you see that the enemy's wicked effort to squelch the message and to make Jezreel's work of none effect will come to naught, for great shall be the day of Jezreel, says the Almighty One, while he brings all his people out of the land. Brother Howe's quoting Hosea 1, verse 11. So who's this Jezreel? What's his work? We should know the answer, after all. We find here that Anitypical David and Elijah are the same person. Look at this reference, tract 9, page 43. As ancient David is in his grave, the king here promised must be an Anitypical David, just as Elijah of Malachi 4:5 must be an Anitypical Elijah. Otherwise, in order to fulfill the prophecies, ancient David must necessarily rise from his grave and ancient Elijah descend from heaven. So here we see a clear connection that this Anitypical David is also the Anitypical Elijah of Malachi 4:5. They're connected. They're the same person. The David, the one shepherd. Here's the conclusive evidence. Ezekiel chapter 34, verses 23-24, it reads, And I will set up one shepherd over them, and he shall feed them, even my servant David. He shall feed them, and he shall be their shepherd. And I, the Lord, will be their God, and my servant David a prince among them. I, the Lord, have spoken it. Well, when is this taking place? The whole of Ezekiel chapter 34. Well, let's see what Brother Houteff says here. Timely Greetings, Volume 2, number 2, page 1, it reads, The self-centered shepherds against whom the prophet is told to write are to be replaced by one shepherd, David. When this takes place, God's people will then have but one shepherd. This, of course, cannot be Christ himself, for inspiration never calls him David, but rather calls him the son of David. Since God's people have always had and still do have many shepherds, the truth stands out clear as crystal that the David of verses 23 and 24 is yet to come, and that the shepherds whom inspiration addresses are in particular those whom David is to succeed. Brethren, just look at the situation today. How many shepherds do we have over the flock? Dozens, perhaps hundreds, when you include all of the shepherds in Laodicea, the Seventh-day Adventist Church. So clearly, they're going to have to be removed and replaced by the one shepherd that God's going to set over his flock. This hasn't happened yet. So we clearly see in the context of that chapter that it's during the kingdom that Anitypical David is raised. In this reference, Timely Greetings, Volume 2, number 2, page 14. Ezekiel, then, was not given a vision of the shepherds in his day, nor of those before his day, but of the shepherds after his day, the day in which God raises up this Anitypical David to feed his hungry and neglected flock. God's people shall then no longer serve strangers, but they shall serve the Lord their God and David their king, whom I will raise up among them. Jeremiah 30, verse 9. Here we see that not only Ezekiel, but Jeremiah also was given a vision of the same truth. Yes, all the prophets. Now this is key, brethren. Brother Houteff is quoting Jeremiah 30, verse 9. This David, this Anitypical King David, who God will raise up among them. If you analyze this, think, brethren, think. Jeremiah chapter 30 and 31 are all talking about the kingdom. Connected with Ezekiel chapter 34 and 36 and 37. We're all talking about the future kingdom. And so, Brother Houteff said that these scriptures are so plain they don't even need interpretation. Okay? They will be literally fulfilled. So this King David, God is going to raise up, is during the kingdom. So anybody that raises up and pops their head up and claims to be a King David today is obviously a rank imposter. And believe me, there are many of them. You've probably run into them. We will call them out here at the end of this presentation. So right here, the timing is that this King David comes up during the kingdom, after the purification. And Jezreel is clearly identified in the whole context of the rod message. Let's just see what Brother Hadif said. Track number 9, page 4, paragraphs 5 to 8. An appeal written by Jezreel the prophet. Well, which prophet? Who is that? To Ruhamah and Amai, the laity, signed, sincerely yours for a happy home, Jezreel by VTH. Who is VTH? Well, you should know. If you don't know by now, that's the initials of Victor Tashel Houteff, the author of the original Shepherd's Rod. That's Jezreel. That's the prophet, the latter-day prophet. And if you don't believe that, look at track number 4, page 51. God ordained that one of the laity, Jezreel, his chosen agent, was to herald the message to Amai and Ruhamah, his brethren and sisters, who in turn were to plead with their mother the ministry. So who's this Jezreel? Well, is it Victor Houteff? Well, if it isn't, then who is it? Jezreel letter number 1, page 8. It's very clear. You may address me, V.H. Jezreel H.B., Mount Carmel Center, Waco, Texas. That letter was penned by Victor Tashel Houteff. And one of his pen's names was Jezreel Hosea Berea, or H.B. So Jezreel is unmistakably Victor Houteff. And this Jezreel letter number 3, page 5, paragraph 1 and 2. The one shepherd, the anitypical David, takes over when? After the unfaithful shepherds are dismissed. Notice that word, after. Okay, right now we have all the false shepherds. King David will not arise on the scene of action until after they're removed. They're dismissed through the slaughter of Ezekiel 9, not before. What's the rod say? Don't let a line or even a word escape your attention. Well, don't let the word after escape your attention. King David is coming after Ezekiel 9, not before. And who's God's chosen shepherd? Well, if you don't know who it is, Lord have mercy. Timely Greetings, Volume 2, Number 2, page 23. God does not forsake his flock. He tenderly calls them my flock and reassures them that he is their God. He will, without fail, set one shepherd to accomplish what a multitude of shepherds have failed to do. Now is your opportunity to feast on meat in due season at the hands of God's chosen shepherd. This is published in 1946. Brethren, that is the anitypical King David, Victor Houteff. It's nobody else. Now people will argue, oh, well, Brother Houteff is dead. So what? His message still lives, and that's what we follow. An inspired message, not a dead prophet or a living counterfeit. So let's look at this kind of a brief outline. We've done this from another study, but the period of Brother Houteff we call the first Levitical period. The Shepherd's Rod, of course, arose in 1930 in Los Angeles, and then in 1935 it moved to Waco, Texas, and existed there, publishing the rod and doing the branches of work until Brother Houteff died in 1955. And then we entered into the scattering period, Zechariah 13:7. No more shepherd. The shepherd will be smitten and the sheep will be scattered. And so, as Florence hijacked the message and took it into the ground, God did have faithful Davidians that rose up and reorganized in 61. And then there was a succession of storehouses from Vista to Salem to Yucaipa to Mountaindale and now to UPA7.org that rose up out of necessity for one purpose, to preserve the original Shepherd's Rod message. There's only been one that's preserved the original tract literature, exactly how Brother Houteff published it. Everything else is a counterfeit. So since 2006, this message is now being broadcast around the world through multiple publishing houses. Why we have no shepherd. We're the hands of Zerubbabel, Elijah's helpers, getting this message out. And finally, at Ezekiel 9, there will be the purification, and all the unfaithful shepherds and rank impostors and false prophets will be dismissed. And then the kingdom set up, and we'll enter into a second Levitical period, kingdom established, and then the special resurrection. And that's when Brother Houteff and other faithful Davidians and Ellen White and those that died in the faith of the three angels' message will be resurrected to resume their work once again. In the reign, the second Levitical period is the theocratic government under rule of Christ, King of Kings, and the visible leader, the antitypical David, Victor Houteff. And that will exist all the way through the plagues and the second coming. So this is how we can comprehend. We're in a period of scattering. All these people looking for office and the rank impostors, office seekers, are nothing but counterfeits, and there are many. So what's the fate of people that don't believe this? Well, this is serious, brethren. As they sent, when this is track number 8, page 7071, it says, as they sent a message after him saying, we will not have this man to reign over us. The only conclusion admissible is that shortly before his return, Christ shall inform his citizens that he's taking the reins in his own hands to set up his kingdom, and that they, upon hearing the announcement, shall refuse to submit themselves to the one through whom he is to rule. Observe that in the message which they sent after him, his servants did not say, we will not have you to reign over us, but rather, we will not have this man to reign over us. What they objected to was Christ reigning over them through someone else. Clearly then, before he is coronated, and prior to his return to reckon with his servants, Matthew 25, verse 19, he appoints a man to reign over them in his stead, whereupon they say to him by their attitude and stand toward his message, we will not have this man to reign over us. Although this man, as we now see, is the antitypical David. The simple means the visible king. So why is it that so many Davidians are afraid or fearful or don't believe that Brother Houteff is King David? Well, it's because either they want to be King David themselves or they want to follow some rank impostor. But what they're really saying to Christ is, we won't let this man reign over us. They don't want the rod to reign over them through Victor Houteff. They want some remodeled counterfeit version. Sad thing, but it's true. So let's do a brief summary of what we covered so far. The antitypical King David arises during the time of the kingdom, after Ezekiel 9. That's very clearly evident. So anybody that has arisen since the death of Brother Houteff in 1955 up until Ezekiel 9, claiming to be King David, is a rank impostor. The antitypical King David is also the same as the prophet Jezreel, Elijah, Zerubbabel, Joshua, etc. These are all titles, antitypical titles that belong to Victor Houteff, God's one true shepherd. The antitypical King David is Brother V.T. Houteff, whom God will raise up to resume his work once again in the kingdom, and of course, through the special resurrection. In Jeremiah 30, verse 9, this David that God will raise up among them, out of the grave. Okay? Nothing's impossible with God. Why don't you believe it? Those who will not have this man to reign over them, the visible antitypical King David, will be slaughtered and will never make it to the kingdom. Read Luke chapter 19, verse 23. It's the parable of the talents. And those that had the one talent that refused to exchange it, what did Jesus say? Take them out and slay them before me. Brethren, there's only been one place in the entire Bible where God has stepped in and slaughtered his people. And that has yet to happen. That will be Ezekiel 9. So if you don't know who King David is, or you follow an impostor, you'll never make it to the kingdom. You'll be cut down. That's the end result. That's why this is a salvation issue. Those that dismiss that because they're divided in the ranks, such as Mountaindale or Arwaco, that, they believe it, but they don't teach it, and their people are all divided, will never make it. Because we should teach positive truth on this. It is a salvation issue. They dismiss it. Oh, it's not a salvation issue. No, because they're cowards. They're afraid to speak the truth because they don't want to lose tithe money. That's why. So who are these rank imposters? Well, there's been several since Brother Houteff, death of Brother Houteff. One of the first was over on the left there, Ben Roden and the counterfeit branch. Now he's dead, okay? He claimed to be Elijah the prophet and thought he was a King David. He's dead. But there's a succession of false branch prophets, the latest being Trent Wilde out of Canada. We don't go into the details of them, but yeah, this is the first of a legion of rank counterfeit message, the branch heresy. Next, we got this man out of the Philippines, Ariel Dakutanan, who thinks he's Elijah the prophet, thinks he's King David. It's a cult. It's a bunch of girlies, little young people, and it's a cesspool of deception and corruption. This guy's made more time-setting false predictions than about anybody, one after another. He's calling for a new one here coming April 2020. It's a counterfeit. Don't listen to him. He's a rank imposter. Brethren, study the shepherd's rod. Don't follow this guy and his cult of groupies and all their defilement and corruption. Defiled message and corrupt practices. The one next to him, Derek West, okay, he broke off of Bashan, thinks he's King David. I met this guy on the street once in 2010 or 2005, GC session, St. Louis. And there was two of them on the street, rival King Davids. I mean, it was almost a joke, claiming to be something that, self-appointed, obviously. And of course, over here on the right, one of the worst rank imposters, Lennox Sam, who thinks he's King David, the one shepherd. Dirty counterfeit, okay? Deceiving many people, especially in Africa. They fall for this guy. Stands up there in front of picture B8 and thinks he's the one shepherd. No, brethren. His doctrines are false. They've been thoroughly exposed by many people. So follow, and he openly says that Brother Houteff is not King David or Elijah. Why? Because he wants to be the one. I mean, this is a red flag, telltale symptom of a counterfeit. And we're warned in inspiration. What about these people that go out and say, oh, you got to come listen to this guy, this voice out in the wilderness, or this voice over there? Brethren, these people are deceived, and they're trying to deceive you. We're told not to attend meetings. Let's read this passage, Early Writings 124, 125. Ellen White says, I was shown the necessity of those who believe that we're having the last message of mercy, being separate from those who are daily imbibing new errors. I saw that neither young nor old should attend their meetings, for it is wrong to thus encourage them while they teach error that is a deadly poison to the soul, and teach for doctrines the commandments of men. The influence of such gatherings is not good. If God has delivered us from such darkness and error, we should stand fast in the liberty wherewith he has set us free and rejoice in the truth. God is displeased with us when we go to listen to error without being obliged to go. For unless he sends us to those meetings where error is forced home to the people by the power of the will, he will not keep us. The angels cease their watchful care over us, and we are left to the buffetings of the enemy, to be darkened and weakened by him and the power of his evil angels, and the light around us becomes contaminated with darkness. Brethren, I don't know how many people do not heed this counsel. We have warned people, do not go listen to Ariel Dakutanan or Lennox Sam, who hypnotize people with these webinars and their presentations, hours and hours, thousands of hours of total madness. This is how a cult works. Ellen White warns us we're not to submit our mind to the control of another. So these brethren go over there and listen to these fables. Bible studies don't go on for hours and hours, day after day or week after week. I said, this is not how we study. A presentation should be at most 1 hour or less to get the essential points. The responsibility of studying is left to us as an individual. We should not lean on the arm of flesh. We're told to go get our doctrine from the golden bowl. And if you don't know who those two pipes are, you will be deceived. It's the ministries, the two instrumentalities, human instrumentalities that God used to bring the truth from the Old and New Testament into the Golden Bull, the Spirit of Prophecy, the inspired writings of none other than Ellen White and Victor Houteff. That's it. The Bible, the Spirit of Prophecy, and the Shepherd's Rod. That's where you go and get your doctrine. You pray and you study. You don't listen to endless hours of webinars and presentations by people like Ariel Docketon and Lennox M. You will be led into darkness. God will not protect you. The angels will withdraw. You're not obliged to listen to error. The only obligation we have to go is plea with Mother. Yes, we're obliged, but we're not to listen to all these rank counterfeit, shepherds, these false King Davids. If you do, God will not be with you. If you promote this stuff and go out and try to lure people in, God will hold you accountable for trying to lead his people into darkness and deceive, if possible, the very elect. But the wise brethren will not be deceived. They will get their doctrine from the Golden Bowl. Get the literature and study for yourself. Get on your knees and pray and ask the Holy Spirit to guide, lead, and direct you. It's an individual responsibility. You can't let some false porter like Trevor Bingham in the Bingham dynasty lead you, or Lennox Sam, or Ariel Docketon. They will lead you straight into the ditch of perdition. Follow the rod. Hear ye the rod, and he who has appointed it. And don't tell Brother Houteff how to teach his message. Follow it for yourself. So that concludes our presentation and our appeal. Know, brethren, who King David is. It's Brother Houteff. And we will appoint him if we're faithful until the end, during the kingdom. So we have to know these things. Don't be deceived. So if you have any further questions, comments on this subject, please subscribe to this YouTube channel or Bright Eon channel for future updates and important studies, or request copies of the original Shepherd's Rod tract literature, or better yet, for assistance to help set up a publishing house in your area so that you can have all of those tracts, 75 pieces, original tracts, in your part of the vineyard and print them for other brethren. We've noticed that these brethren are easily misled because they are not being fed with the original Shepherd's Rod. They listen to some guy on a webinar week after week, and it's like that's how they're led into darkness. So we can help you set up your own publishing house. Feel free to contact us anytime. Here's our email, upa5453@gmail.com. Telephone, you can text or call us, and visit one of our 3 websites, yparish.org, where we have this presentation and many other issues of controversy amongst professed Davidians that have arisen since 1955. So, brethren, let us stand strong for the truth, come what may, and remain faithful to God and Jesus through his appointed one shepherd, Brother Houteff, in the original Shepherd's Rod. May God bless your search for truth as for hidden treasure. Godspeed.